Hey guys, our story for tonight is about daily life as an ancient Roman citizen. But before we dive into the topic, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And while we're at it, kindly tell us where you came from and what time you're listening now. And without further ado, let's dive in. Life as a Roman citizen was both a privilege and a responsibility. To hold Roman citizenship meant belonging to one of the most powerful empires in history, with rights and duties that shaped daily life. Citizens moved through bustling markets filled with goods from across the known world, visited bathhouses that were as much social hubs as places of hygiene, and participated in civic duties that kept Rome functioning. Their lives blended personal routines with obligations to the state, creating a society that valued both leisure and service. A typical Roman citizen began the day at sunrise. Homes varied greatly, from grand villas decorated with mosaics to cramped apartments known as inns. The sounds of roosters and merchants preparing stalls carried through the streets, signaling the start of another day. The wealthy woke to the care of slaves who prepared clothing and food, while poorer citizens rose in crowded rooms, often sharing space with extended families. The rhythm of the morning was shaped by class, but all citizens shared the same city, the same sense of belonging to Rome. Breakfast, or yantakilam, was usually light. Bread dipped in wine, olives, and cheese formed the simplest meals. Wealthier citizens might enjoy eggs, honey, or fruit, while the poorest relied on whatever leftovers they had from the day before. Unlike modern customs, breakfast was not considered important, more a quick bite to provide energy until midday. Food preparation was often done the evening prior, with hearth fires relit in the morning. Children ate quickly before accompanying parents on errands or lessons, while adults focused on the tasks awaiting them in the busy city. After a small meal, citizens began early errands. Many visited their patrons during the morning salutatio, paying respects and asking for assistance or favors. The wealthy distributed coins, food, or small gifts, and in return received loyalty, support, and public recognition. For poorer citizens, this system was vital, providing security in a city where survival could be difficult. The early hours also allowed craftsmen, shopkeepers, and traders to arrange their work for the day. Rome was alive with noisy clatter of carts, the shouts of sellers, and the greetings exchanged between neighbors. The Forum stood as the heartbeat of daily life. It was more than a marketplace. It was a gathering place for politics, commerce, and social interaction. Citizens wove through crowded streets, lined with marble temples and basilicas. Farmers carried produce, bakers displayed bread, and craftsmen set out wares. Senators delivered speeches, while philosophers debated ideas in open spaces. The Forum was where Rome revealed its strength and variety, a living testament to its empire. Every citizen, from the humblest worker to the wealthiest aristocrat, found purpose within its lively square. Walking among the market stalls revealed the empire's diversity. There were amphorae filled with olive oil, jars of honey, and baskets of figs. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, and saffron arrived from distant lands, while traders sold wool from Britain and glassware from the east. Fishmongers shouted prices beside butchers cutting meat. The noise, smells, and constant movement created a vibrant atmosphere. For many, it was not only a place to shop, but a stage for Rome's prosperity, where the vast resources of the empire were laid out before their eyes. Food was central to Roman identity. The staples of bread, wine, and olive oil sustained most citizens, forming what Romans called the Mediterranean triad. Bread was bought daily, baked in communal ovens that filled streets with their warm aroma. Wine was diluted with water, flavored with herbs or honey, and consumed by nearly all ages. Olive oil, essential for cooking and lamps, was measured by the amphora and transported from distant provinces. For the poor, meals were plain but filling. For the rich, they became elaborate displays of status. Street vendors catered to busy citizens seeking quick meals. Sausages sizzling on skewers, chickpea pancakes, and fried fish filled the air with inviting scents. Taverns offered hot meals for workers unable to cook at home, often served with cheap wine. These places were loud, crowded, and sometimes dangerous, but they provided affordable nourishment and community for those living in cramped apartments. Eating outdoors or on the go was a normal part of Roman life, reflecting the city's non-stop energy. After errands and meals, many turned toward the bathhouses. These were far more than places to wash. They were centers of social and cultural life. Citizens paid a small fee, entered grand complexes decorated with mosaics and statues, and moved through rooms of varying temperatures. The baths were equalizers, where senators and commoners might share the same waters. They embodied Rome's civic pride, combining luxury with accessibility. Visiting the baths became an essential part of the daily routine. A moment of both relaxation and connection. Inside the bathhouse, the process unfolded step by step. Citizens began in changing rooms, leaving clothing with attendants. They moved into warm rooms to adjust, then into the hot caldarium, filled with steam from cleverly engineered heating systems beneath the floors. Here, sweat cleansed the body before a plunge into the frigidarium, the cold pool that refreshed and invigorated. Massages, oils, and scraping tools known as strigils completed the ritual. For many, conversations and business deals held in these steamy chambers were as important as the bathing itself. Attached to the baths were excised yards known as palestra. Here citizens played ball games, wrestled, or trained with weights. Fitness was linked with civic duty, as strong bodies were seen as honorable and useful to the state. The hum of voices mixed with the shouts of athletes, while spectators leaned on colonnades to watch the activity. The connection between health and Rome's power was evident. A healthy citizenry reflected a strong empire. Even casual exercise held meaning within the cultural framework of Roman life. Water itself played a crucial role in making all this possible. Rome's aqueducts, marvels of engineering, carried fresh water across valleys and hills to supply fountains, baths, and homes. Citizens marveled at the stone arches stretching across the landscape, a visible reminder of Rome's ingenuity. Public fountains dotted neighborhoods, ensuring even poorer citizens had access to water. The constant flow, guided by gravity, sustained the city's life and symbolized Rome's ability to control nature. For Romans, clean water was not just utility, but proof of their civilization's greatness. By midday, hunger returned. Lunch or prandem was typically simple: bread, cheese, fruit, and sometimes cold meat. It was eaten quickly, often standing or in small gatherings. Wealthier households might serve roasted poultry, fresh fish, or seasoned vegetables, prepared earlier by slaves. Unlike the main evening meal, lunch carried little ceremony. It was functional, a way to sustain energy for the afternoon. In homes, workers and family members gathered briefly before returning to duties, errands, or leisure. Afternoons opened space for recreation and pastimes. Gambling was popular, with dice games played on carved boards or scratched into stone surfaces. Children rolled nuts or played with dolls made of clay and rags. Storytellers and entertainers filled taverns with songs and jokes. Others passed time reading scrolls, discussing philosophy, or strolling through gardens. Leisure was valued, especially for citizens who had completed morning obligations, though not everyone could afford the same activities. All Romans shared the impulse to balance work with enjoyment. Still, Roman citizenship came with responsibilities. Assemblies gathered citizens to vote on laws, elect officials, or make decisions about war and peace. While the wealthy held greater influence, participation reminded citizens of their role in governance. Attending assemblies could be time-consuming, but it was a duty that reinforced identity. Citizens also faced the expectation of military service when called upon, especially in earlier centuries. Even in peaceful times, the awareness of duty lingered, shaping the rhythm of civic life. Voting itself was a complex affair. Citizens gathered in groups, divided by wealth and status, each casting votes that carried different weight. Political candidates campaigned with speeches and handshakes, promising favors or improvements. Bribery was common, as ambitious men sought to secure loyalty. Despite corruption, the system provided a sense of involvement. Citizens felt part of a larger whole, contributing, however modestly, to the empire's direction. For many, attending assemblies was both obligation and spectacle. The system of patronage tied society together. Patrons provided financial aid, legal assistance, and political protection, while clients offered loyalty and public support. This exchange shaped daily interactions, From morning visits to visible demonstrations of allegiance during public events, the relationship was not always equal, but it offered security for the poor and reinforced prestige for the wealthy. Citizens navigated these networks carefully, knowing that connections often determine survival and opportunity. Public displays of generosity, known as munera, further reinforced these bonds. Wealthy citizens funded games, temples, or monuments to showcase their commitment to Rome. These acts, though costly, earned admiration and influence. Citizens attended spectacles or admired new structures with gratitude, aware of the patron's role in providing them. Such acts blurred the line between personal ambition and public service, weaving individual fame into the fabric of civic life. Evenings brought entertainment of many kinds. Chariot races at the Circus Maximus thrilled spectators with speed and danger, while gladiatorial games in the Colosseum captivated crowds. Theaters hosted plays, ranging from tragedies to light comedies. Musicians and dancers performed in taverns and squares. These diversions brought citizens together, providing moments of collective excitement. They also reminded people of Rome's power, as the sheer scale of events reflected resources only the empire could command. The phrase bread and circuses captured Rome's strategy for keeping citizens content. Free grain distributions and public entertainment softened unrest, ensuring loyalty. Citizens enjoyed the benefits while remaining tied to the state's generosity. Watching games or receiving food made them feel included in Rome's prosperity, even when their personal lives were humble. This exchange between government and people revealed a society built on both duty and distraction. Dinner or cena marked the day's highlight. Poorer families ate simple meals: porridge, bread, vegetables, and occasionally meat. Wealthier households reclined on couches, enjoying lavish spreads of multiple courses. Fish from the Mediterranean, game from the countryside, and exotic fruits from distant provinces graced their tables. Wine flowed freely, mixed with spices and honey. Conversations stretched late into the evening, blending family life with social performance. Cena was not merely nourishment, it was a ritual of identity and belonging. Etiquette surrounded the evening meal. Guests washed hands before reclining, food was served in order of status, and conversations followed patterns of respect. Slaves moved quietly between couches, pouring wine and serving dishes. Entertainment often accompanied the feast. Musicians played lyres, poets recited verses, or acrobats performed. The atmosphere ranged from intimate to extravagant, depending on wealth and ambition. For citizens, dining customs reflected not only tastes, but also social standing. Religion infused daily existence. Citizens greeted household gods at shrines, lighting lamps or leaving offerings of bread and wine. Families honored ancestors with rituals that reinforced continuity between generations. Public ceremonies filled the calendar, with processions, sacrifices, and festivals involving entire neighborhoods. The gods were believed to oversee every aspect of life, from harvests to household health. Participation was expected, binding citizens to both tradition and community. Festivals offered respite from daily routines. Saturnalia, marked by feasting and role reversals, filled streets with laughter. Lupercalia, a fertility rite, blended ritual with revelry. Citizens joined in public dances, games, and sacrifices. These celebrations blurred social divisions, reminding all of their shared identity as Romans. For many, festivals were the highlight of the year, moments when the burdens of citizenship gave way to joy and collective memory. Yet burdens persisted. Military service could remove men from home for years, leaving families uncertain. Taxes, though necessary, strained households. Fires and collapses were frequent in the crowded insula. Disease and shortages reminded citizens of their vulnerability, even within Rome's grandeur. Balancing the privileges of citizenship with its challenges defined much of daily life. Still, few would trade the status of Roman citizen, for it carried protections and pride unmatched across the ancient world. For ordinary citizens, daily challenges often overshadowed grandeur. Crowded streets, noisy neighbors, and the struggle to afford food were constant realities. Yet routines, market visits, meals, festivals provided stability. Even in hardship, The sense of belonging to Rome offered comfort. Citizenship, with its rights and obligations, gave identity and purpose, uniting individuals under the empire as a vast shadow. The life of a Roman citizen reflects the complexity of the empire itself. Duty and leisure, hardship and luxury, private devotion and public spectacle coexisted in constant rhythm, from crowded markets to quiet family shrines. Every detail bound citizens to a community larger than themselves. Though centuries have passed, echoes of this life remain in laws, customs, and cities shaped by Rome's influence. To be Roman was to carry both burden and honor, leaving a legacy that still endures. The first light of dawn spreads gently over the Roman city. Shadows retreat from the narrow streets, and the soft sound of birds fills the air. Stone walls reflect the faint warmth of sunlight, and tiled rooftops glisten slightly with dew. Few people are awake at this early hour, but already there is movement. A baker opening his shop, a servant sweeping the entrance of a villa, and a faint smell of bread baking drifting lazily through the air. The city does not wake quickly. Instead, it stirs slowly, as though stretching after a long sleep. The Roman citizen rises from his simple bed. The wooden frame creaks as he moves, and the thin blanket is folded carefully to the side. Sleep lingers in his eyes, but the duties of the day will not wait. The floor beneath his feet feels cool, smooth stone worn by years of footsteps. He sits quietly for a moment, letting the morning settle around him. Outside, faint sounds of neighbors rising echo through the courtyard. There is no rush. The pace is steady, shaped by countless mornings that feel much the same as this one. From the courtyard, familiar noises drifting wood, a clay jar being set down, the faint bray of a donkey beyond the walls, and the quiet chatter of two neighbors already sharing words over a low fence. Birds flutter across the rooftops, wings rustling softly against the early light. The smell of damp earth lingers from the night's cool air. Every sound is small and ordinary, yet it blends into the rhythm of the household. For the Roman citizen, this chorus of simple noises marks the true beginning of the day. The morning wash is a small but steady ritual. A servant brings a clay jar of water, poured carefully into a basin. The water splashes softly, cool against the hands and face. There is no soap as we know it, only oils or simple abrasives to cleanse the skin. The act is slow, measured, and calming. Each splash against the cheeks brings wakefulness, a reminder that the day has begun. The basin is set aside afterward, and the water seeps quietly into the earth of the courtyard floor, leaving behind a darker patch of stone. Breakfast is simple, unhurried, and modest. A piece of bread, hardened from the night, is softened by dipping it into wine or watered-down vinegar. Sometimes a bit of cheese or fruit accompanies it, but often it is nothing more than bread and a sip of liquid to ease hunger. The citizen chews slowly, the taste plain but steady, enough to carry him into the tasks ahead. There is no feast, no rush, only the steady act of eating. Each bite is part of the rhythm, repeated morning after morning with little change. Dressing for the day takes no great effort. The tunic, worn and softened by time, slips highly over the shoulders. It is fastened with a simple belt, and sandals are tied carefully, the leather straps looping around ankles. If the day requires more formality, a toga might be arranged, though it is heavy and cumbersome. For most citizens, the tunic is enough. The clothes carry no ornament, only function, serving their role in the cycle of daily life. Once dressed, the citizen is prepared to step into the world beyond the household walls. The streets begin to stir with life. Merchants wheel carts into place, their wooden wheels clattering softly on the stones. Voices rise, calling greetings across narrow passageways. The smell of fresh bread wafts strongly now, joined by hints of herbs and dried fish. Dogs trot lazily through the alleys, while children chase each other, their laughter echoing between the walls. The streets are narrow, lined with stone buildings pressed close together. The sun climbs higher, and the once quiet lanes become pathways of movement and sound, a blend of footsteps, voices, and the day beginning in earnest. The marketplace is the heart of the morning. The Roman citizen walks steadily toward, passing others heading the same way. The forum is alive with stalls, baskets, and awnings stretched overhead. Colors brighten the square. Red apples, green herbs, golden loaves of bread. The air hums with voices, layered and overlapping in constant chatter. Each merchant arranges his goods carefully, stacking olives in small mounds, setting clay jugs neatly, and polishing bronze wares to catch the light. The marketplace is not chaotic, but full. Its rhythm built from countless small exchanges. The citizen wanders among the stalls, his eyes moving from one table to another. He touches a loaf to test its firmness, lifts a fig to gauge its ripeness, and exchanges brief words with a merchant he has seen many times before. The stalls are familiar, the faces unchanged, and the ritual of browsing carries comfort. He does not rush to purchase, but lets his eyes linger on the colors, the scents, and the rhythm of voices rising and falling around him. The market is not only for buying, but also for being present in its steady hum. Merchants work with quiet persistence. They call out softly to passers-by, praising the freshness of their produce or the strength of their goods. Hands move steadily, weighing grain, tying bundles of herbs, or pouring oil into small flasks. Coins clink as they change hands, each transaction a small but vital piece of the day's flow. Their stalls are plain, often little more than wooden boards supported by stands, but the goods bring color and life. For these merchants, every morning repeats this same pattern, each sale a part of survival in the city's endless cycle. The citizen selects bread, still warm from the oven, and a handful of figs placed gently into a woven basket. The coins pass quietly from his hand to the merchant's. The act is not remarkable, but it sustains the day. Around him, others do the same. Mothers with children, laborers gathering food for the evening, and older citizens walking slowly, their steps measured. Each purchase adds to the soft rhythm of the market, where necessity and routine blend into one steady movement repeated countless times through the years. Street performers gather at the edges of the marketplace. A man plucks the strings of a lyre, the notes light and meandering. A child balances on a narrow board, wobbling slightly but earning smiles from onlookers. Another tells stories, his hands moving as he paints pictures with words. The performances are small, humble, and fleeting. They serve not to dazzle, but to add color to the market's atmosphere. The citizen watches for a moment. 10 mobus on, leaving behind the faint melody of strings blending with the chatter of voices. Neighbors meet and exchange words near the market square. The conversations are simple. A remark about the weather, a comment on the rising price of grain, or news of a festival being planned. These talks are not hurried, nor are they deeply important, but they weave the threads of community. Each nod, each greeting, ties one citizen to another. The Roman citizen pauses, offers a smile, and shares a few sentences before continuing on his way. In this manner, the city is held together, not by grand events, but by countless small exchanges. The public fountain is a place of gathering. Water flows steadily from carved stone mouths into large basins. Citizens come with clay jars, waiting their turn to fill them. The splash of water is constant, mingling with the hum of voices. The fountain is not only for necessity, but also for social life. Women share gossip, children laugh as they dip their hands, and men pause to rest in the shade. The citizen steps forward, fills his jar, and steps back slowly, careful not to spill, as the rhythm of the fountain continues without pause. Carrying the water home is a steady, physical task. The jar rests, heavy against the hip, the weight pressing with each step. The stone streets stretch long, yet the citizen moves at a careful, unhurried pace. Around him, others carry their burdens, each following their own paths back through the narrow lanes. The sound of sloshing water mixes with the scrape of sandals on stone. Though the task is small, it is repeated every day, a constant reminder of life's basic needs and the steady labor required to meet them. By midday, the city slows. The sun burns brightly overhead, and shadows shorten against the ground. Citizens retreat indoors, away from the heat, into shaded courtyards and rooms, where the air feels cooler. Meals are light, often bread, fruit, and water. Conversation softens, and movement quiets. The marketplace grows less crowded, and the streets empty as citizens rest. The stillness of midday is not silence, but a softer rhythm, the city breathing more slowly. In this pose, the Roman citizen finds rest, knowing the day will stretch long again once the heat fades. The Roman citizen prepares for his visit to the baths. He gathers a small towel, a flask of oil, and a strigil, the curved tool used to scrape the skin. These items are simple, carried by nearly everyone who visits. He steps from his home into the street, joining others heading the same way. The baths are not only for washing, but for meeting friends, sharing news, and passing time. The short walk feels familiar. The same path, taken many times before, worn smooth by years of footsteps, heading toward the same destination. At the entrance of the baths, the citizen is greeted by the noise of activity. Voices echo within the high stone walls, mingling with the sound of splashing water. Slaves move about carrying oil flasks and towels, assisting their masters. The smell of damp stone and warm water fills the air. The entrance hall is large and open, with benches where visitors pause to leave their belongings. The citizen pays a small fee and steps inside, moving toward the rooms where heat and water will shape the rhythm of the afternoon. The tepidarium is the first chamber, warm but not overwhelming. It prepares the body for what comes next. The air is thick with gentle steam, and the stone walls glisten with moisture. Citizens sit on benches, their bodies glistening lightly as they adjust to the warmth. Some speak in hushed tones, discussing trade, politics, or family matters. Others sit silently, eyes closed, letting the warmth seep slowly into their limbs. The Roman citizen finds a seat, rests for a while, and breathes deeply, feeling the calm weight of heat settle around him. From the tepidarium, he moves into the caldarium. The heat is intense, heavy, and pressing. Steam rises in thick clouds, clinging to the skin. Water in the heated pool ripples as citizens step carefully into its depths. Muscles loosen, and tension eases beneath the warmth. Attendants move quietly, offering oil or scraping tools. The citizen sits at the edge for a time, then enters the water, letting the heat surround him. It is both uncomfortable and soothing, a challenge to the body but a relief to the spirit, part of the rhythm of bathing. After enduring the heat, the frigidarium offers relief. The pool here is cold, shockingly so after the heavy warmth of the caldarium. Citizens lower themselves slowly, gasping softly as the coolness spreads across their bodies. The water is clear, reflecting the stone ceiling above. It refreshes, sharpens, and awakens. Laughter rises from some who find the cold invigorating, while others simply breathe deeply, adjusting to the change. The Roman citizen immerses himself briefly, emerging with renewed energy, his skin tingling from the sharp contrast. It is a cycle repeated each visit, balancing heat and cold. Conversations flow freely in the baths. Men gather in small groups, discussing the affairs of the city, the success of crops, or the price of goods in the market. Some speak of politics, though carefully, mindful of words that might offend. Others exchange news of friends or family. The tone is casual, relaxed by the warmth and comfort of the surroundings. Even strangers may strike up small conversations, bound by the shared rhythm of bathing. The Roman citizen listens, sometimes adding a word, but often content to let the voices weave around him like soft threads. Leaving the baths, the citizen feels refreshed, his body light, and his mind settled. The streets outside are busier now, filled with those who have also completed their visit. The afternoon sun has lost some of its sharpness, and shadows begin to stretch longer across the stones. Vendors return to their stalls, selling to those who have rested through the midday heat. The air is filled again with movement, sound, and the faint scent of cooking food drifting from homes. The citizen carries himself calmly, knowing the day still holds quiet tasks before night arrives. Afternoon duties await. For some, this means work in shops or fields. For others, it is attending to business in the forum. The Roman citizen moves steadily to his place of obligation. Whether it be a stall, an office, or a seat where records are kept, wax tablets are unrolled, styluses pressed carefully to their surfaces, recording numbers, names, or messages. Each stroke is precise, each line a part of the city's slow, steady machinery. These are not grand tasks, but essential ones, performed daily without fanfare, shaping the quiet flow of Roman life. The wax tablet is simple, yet vital. Covered in a thin layer of wax, it bears the marks of a stylus, notes that can be smoothed away and rewritten countless times. The citizen presses carefully. The lines, shallow but clear. He records debts owed, small agreements made, or lists of goods exchanged. The tablet is light, carried easily in one hand, a tool of constant use. Around him, others do the same. Their heads bent low, their styluses scratching softly against the wax. It is a quiet chorus, the sound of order maintained in written form. The civic forum is alive with steady movement. Citizens gather on its wide steps, some speaking in groups, others listening to minor disputes settled by officials. The air is filled with the murmur of voices, layered and calm. Stone columns rise around the space, giving shade where people rest, leaning against the cool surfaces. Vendors pass through, offering small snacks or drinks. The Roman citizen pauses here, observing, perhaps joining a brief discussion before moving on. The forum is not always filled with drama. Much of the time it hums quietly with a steady beat of daily governance. Evening approaches, and preparations for the final meal of the day begin. In homes across the city, fires are rekindled, pots set upon them, and ingredients laid out. Bread, olives, cheese, and vegetables are most common, though fish or meat may appear if fortune allows. The smells drift into courtyards and streets, mingling together into a tapestry of scents. The Roman citizen returns home, setting aside his belongings, and joins in the preparations. The meal is not hurried, but assembled with the same patience and rhythm that carries through every part of the day. The family gathers around low tables or couches, sharing the evening meal. Bread is broken, olives placed into small bowls, and simple dishes served in clay vessels. Conversation flows, easily, voices soft but steady, recounting the small events of the day. Children listen, sometimes adding their laughter, while elders speak with calm authority. The meal is not extravagant, but it is the heart of the household, a time for unity. Each bite is simple, yet meaningful. A moment where the rhythm of daily labor eases into the comfort of shared presence. As the sky darkens, oil lamps are lit once more. Their glow spreads gently across rooms, filling corners with golden warmth. Shadows flicker along stone walls, and the crackle of a small fire adds to the quiet soundscape. The city outside grows softer, its noises dimming as citizens retreat indoors. The Roman citizen feels the weight of the day's labor lifting. The light of the lamps is calming, steady, and familiar. It signals the closing of the day, the final chapter before rest, carrying with it a sense of comfort and gentle finality. Night settles over the city, and rest draws near. Children are put to bed, their breathing soon steady and soft. The last tasks are completed. A jug of water placed nearby, tools arranged for the morning, sandals set neatly by the door. Outside, the streets are hushed, with only the faint call of a night bird or the sound of distant footsteps breaking the silence. The Roman citizen lies down once again, his body stretched upon the wooden frame, the thin blanket drawn close. Another day ends, much like the one before, and tomorrow will begin again. The earliest sign of a festival is not always loud or obvious. It begins with merchants quietly rearranging their goods, setting aside special items they know will be in demand. A citizen walking through the forum might notice garlands being prepared, bundles of greenery stacked neatly beside stalls. Children ask questions about the coming day, their curiosity met with calm, practiced replies. The anticipation is subtle, more a change in the air than in sight or sound. Still, the rhythm of the city shifts, preparing for something that will draw everyone together. The markets grow busier as the festival draws near. Shoppers move slowly between stalls, inspecting fruits, breads, and small tokens that will be offered or shared. Vendors, practiced in the ritual of such days, display their wares more carefully than usual. Some prepare tiny cakes or honeyed treats, while others set aside jars of oil or wine. There is no rush, but a steady rise in activity, as if the entire city breathes a little deeper in preparation. The Roman citizen feels this change, part of a collective movement toward the same quiet purpose. Streets take on new colors as decorations appear. Wreaths of laurel are hung upon doorways, and fresh flowers are tied with string to simple wooden posts. Public spaces are dressed in garlands, their green leaves softening the hard lines of stone. It is not extravagant, but noticeable, a subtle beauty placed with care. Citizens pause to admire the effort, nodding in appreciation before continuing their way. The city, so familiar in its ordinary rhythm, seems momentarily refreshed. Even the most mundane corners are touched lightly by the sense of anticipation. Within homes, families prepare in small, methodical ways. Tables are cleared for offerings, vessels polished, and bowls set out for food or wine that will later be shared with neighbors or left at shrines. The work is unhurried, each task performed with care. The youngest members of the household may watch quietly, asking questions or offering small hands to assist. These preparations are less about grandeur than about order, an affirmation of place within the wider rhythm of the city. The Roman citizen moves through them steadily, knowing each gesture has meaning. Public spaces, too, are made ready. Officials direct attendants to sweep colonnades, clear litter, and prepare benches. In the larger forums, temporary platforms are raised for speeches or small displays. Water fountains are cleaned, their basins filled until they gleam in the light. Citizens notice the work, pausing to watch as familiar areas transform subtly. The effort is practical, not dramatic, but it adds to the sense that a different rhythm is approaching. The ordinary forum, so often filled with business and duty, becomes a stage 4 shared experience and quiet celebration. Vendors prepare special goods, setting aside baskets of figs, dates, and nuts. Bakers shape loaves into festive forms, sprinkling them with seeds or honey. Clay lamps are polished, their surfaces shining in the afternoon sun. These items are not luxury, but they carry the quiet excitement of rarity, things not purchased every day. The air fills with richer smells, bread baking, meat roasting, oil warming in clay pots. Citizens stop to inspect, running their fingers lightly across the goods, deciding what small indulgence they might bring home for the evening. Neighbors speak with anticipation. At thresholds and fountains, in markets, and along shaded porticos, conversations turn to the coming day. They speak of what they will cook, whom they will visit, or where they will stand during the procession. Words are exchanged calmly, voices steady, but with a slight brightness, not always present in daily exchanges. The Roman citizen listens and responds, weaving into these small conversations. It is not excitement in the modern sense, but a patient readiness, a shared understanding that the city will move together in one direction soon. At home, small shrines are prepared, statues are dusted, bowls placed neatly at their feet, and simple offerings of grain or oil are made. The gestures are quiet, performed without spectacle. Children watch, sometimes mimicking the actions with their own small bowls or tokens. Incense might be lit, its smoke curling upward in slow, delicate spirals, carrying fragrance into the room. These household rituals are personal, but they echo the larger patterns that will unfold outside. In the heart of each home, a small reflection of the citywide festival already begins. The morning of the festival arrives with a softer stillness. Citizens rise earlier, washing carefully, dressing in garments freshly cleaned. Streets are filled sooner than usual, sandals clicking against stone as people move toward the same spaces. The air feels different, not hurried but expectant. Vendors open their stalls quickly, displaying goods already prepared. The Roman citizen joins the flow, walking side by side with neighbors and strangers alike. There is little need for conversation. The purpose is clear, and the shared movement itself becomes part of the ritual. Processions gather slowly, first a few individuals, then larger groups. Priests in simple robes lead the way, carrying sacred items on poles. Citizens fall into lines, their movements measured and calm. Musicians appear with flutes and drums, their notes steady, filling the air with a rhythm that keeps the procession unified. Children are lifted onto shoulders to see more clearly, their eyes wide as they watch familiar streets take on this new pattern. The Roman citizen walks with them, step by step, blending into the shared motion that pulls everyone forward. Music remains simple, yet it lingers. Flutes play high, gentle tones, while drums provide a steady beat beneath. The sound echoes between stone walls, giving even narrow streets a sense of openness. Citizens hum along softly, their voices blending with the instruments, not overpowering them. The music does not demand attention, but accompanies the procession, a background that ties movements together. It is a sound the Roman citizen knows well, heard at every festival, yet each time it feels slightly different. shaped by the day, the crowd, and the shared moment. Priests move with practiced precision. At designated points, they pause to sprinkle water, scatter grain, or raise their hands in prayer. Their actions are deliberate, unhurried, and quiet enough that words are often lost in the noise of the crowd. Still, citizens understand the gestures, the meaning carried by movement rather than sound. Some bow their heads, others watch with calm curiosity. The Roman citizen observes with familiarity, knowing these rituals repeat countless times across the year, yet always carrying weight, grounding the day in sacred order. Ordinary citizens form the bulk of the crowd. They walk, watch, or simply stand in shaded corners, allowing the procession to pass. Their clothing is plain, their gestures restrained. Children tug at tunics, eager for sweet treats, while elders lean on staffs, their eyes steady on the rituals unfolding. Laughter is rare, but not absent. It rises occasionally, quickly fading back into the calm rhythm of the gathering. For the Roman citizen, the comfort lies in this balance. The mingling of solemnity with the gentle hum of ordinary people simply being present together. Animals are brought forth for sacrifice. Sheep, goats, or cattle are led carefully, their hooves clicking softly on the stones. The animals move slowly, guided by attendants who whisper to keep them calm. Citizens watch with quiet interest, some stepping closer, others averting their gaze. The act is neither rushed nor sensational. It is deliberate, part of a tradition older than memory. The Roman citizen observes, acknowledging the meaning without dwelling on the details. The sacrifice is symbolic, a gesture binding community, gods, and city into a single shared rhythm. The forum becomes the central stage. Citizens gather on steps, filling the wide expanse with steady movement. Shade is sought beneath columns, while others stand openly beneath the sun. Officials move among the crowd, guiding the order of events. The sound of voices grows, layered and constant, yet never overwhelming. The forum feels both familiar and transformed, a space of governance reshaped into a place of gathering. The Roman citizen stands among the many, content to observe, blending into the rhythm of countless footsteps and murmured conversations. Children experience the festival differently. Their eyes widen at the colors, their ears catch the rise of music, and their hands tug at parents for food or trinkets. Small toys carved from wood or clay are sold in corners, exchanged with laughter and joy. Parents allow indulgence sparingly, knowing the memory of the day will linger in these simple gifts. The Roman citizen watches them with calm patience, recognizing in their delight the same wonder once felt long ago. The cycle continues, each generation absorbing the festival in its own quiet way. Food becomes a centerpiece in public spaces. Citizens share bread, olives, nuts, and fruits, passing bowls from hand to hand. Small cups of wine are sipped, watered down for refreshment. Vendors sell pastries or honey cakes, their scents drifting across the forum. The act of eating together is as important as the food itself, a reminder of community. The Roman citizen accepts a piece of bread from a neighbor, chews slowly, and feels the weight of the moment. It is nourishment, yes, but also a gesture of unity, a thread binding many lives together. The theater becomes another place of gathering. Wooden stages rise in open spaces, actors donning masks and tunics. The performances are simple, often humorous, filled with exaggerated gestures to delight even those at a distance. Citizens laugh softly, their shoulders shaking with amusement. The Roman citizen watches, content with the predictability of the stories, the rhythm of voices projected across the crowd. The theater is not a grand escape, but a familiar comfort, part of the festival's fabric, woven seamlessly into the day's slow unfolding. Games, too, draw attention. Simple contests of strength, running, or mock battles entertain the crowd. Cheers rise occasionally, but they are not thunderous. Instead, they ripple gently, spreading through those gathered like small waves. Children cheer more loudly than adults, their voices piercing through the steady hum. The Roman citizen observes from a distance, not compelled to join, but not disinterested either. These games are part of the cycle, expected and familiar, blending into the larger rhythm of the festival without ever dominating its pace. Between events, citizens find rest. They sit beneath shaded porticos, lean against cool stone, or recline briefly on steps. Water is drawn from fountains, splashed across faces and hands. Conversations soften, laughter fades, and the hum of the city lowers to a gentle murmur. The Roman citizen takes these pauses with appreciation, letting the body recover from standing, walking, and watching. These interludes are part of the pattern, as necessary as the rituals themselves, giving the day its balance of movement and stillness. The afternoon heat presses down, and shade becomes precious. Citizens crowd beneath awnings or cluster in narrow alleys where buildings block the sun. Clay cups of watered wine pass between hands, cooling the mouth and throat. Children grow restless, their energy waning, while elders close their eyes briefly, resting. The Roman citizen fans himself gently with a small cloth, patient in the heat. This is part of the experience, no different than any other day beneath the Mediterranean sun. The festival continues, shaped as much by weather as by ritual. More offerings are made as the day progresses. Citizens step forward to place coins, grain, or oil upon altars. Some bow their heads, others whisper prayers, while many simply perform the gesture silently. The offerings accumulate slowly, filling bowls and baskets until they overflow. The sight is familiar, repeated at each festival, yet it carries quiet meaning. The Roman citizen adds his own small token, a contribution not grand but sincere, knowing it is part of the collective gesture, one among many threads woven into the day. As the sun lowers, citizens return gradually to their homes. The streets, once crowded, begin to thin, though voices still carry from open windows. The Roman citizen walks with his family, steps slower than in the morning. The city feels both lighter and heavier. Lighter with the release of ritual duties, heavier with the calm fatigue of a day well spent. Doorways open, neighbors exchange brief words, and the flow of movement becomes more dispersed. The festival does not end abruptly, but softens, fading back into the ordinary rhythm of home. Evening settles, and firelight fills the streets. Lamps are lit along porticos, their glow reflected on stone. Smoke from small hearths rises into the sky, carrying the scent of roasting meat and baking bread. Children laugh softly, chasing one another until parents call them back indoors. The Roman citizen lights his own lamp, placing it carefully on the table. The golden glow spreads through the room, gentle and steady, the same light that guided countless evenings before. Festival or not, the comfort of firelight remains unchanged. Families gather once more, sharing leftover food from the day. Bread is broken again, olives placed in bowls, wine poured into small cups. The conversation is quieter now, voices softened by fatigue. Children lean against parents, half asleep, while elders speak in measured tones. The Roman citizen eats slowly, savoring each bite, though the food itself is simple. The meaning lies less in taste than in the act of sharing. The quiet continuation of the day's communal rhythm brought into the heart of the home. Lamps burn steadily as the evening deepens. Their light flickers against stone walls, casting shadows that dance gently in the corners. Outside, the sounds of the city have diminished. A dog barks distantly. Footsteps echo briefly, then fade. The Roman citizen adjusts the wick, ensuring the flame holds. The calm is deep, wrapping the household in a sense of closure. The festival's energy has dissolved into stillness, leaving behind only warmth, memory, and the soft glow of lamps guarding the passage into night. The quiet after festivities is perhaps the most striking. Streets that were filled with voices, music, and processions are now hushed. Decorations remain, fluttering slightly in the night air, their colors muted in the dim light. Altars still hold the remains of offerings, their bowls heavy with grain, coins, or flowers. The Roman citizen steps outside briefly, looking upon the stillness. Iris familia, this return to silence, a reminder that the city breathes deeply after each moment of shared activity, returning slowly to its ordinary pace. Citizens reflect on the day in their own ways. Some recall specific moments of phrase from a prayer, the laughter of children, the taste of honeyed bread. Others think only of the calm satisfaction that lingers. The Roman citizen lies upon his bed, the thin blanket pulled across his body, replaying the day's rhythm in his thoughts. It is not excitement that fills him, but a steady calm. The assurance that life moves in cycles, that festivals return again and again, shaping the passage of time with gentle repetition. By morning, the city has returned to routine. Decorations are removed, offerings cleared, and markets return to their ordinary wares. Citizens resume their tasks, sweeping thresholds, carrying water, and recording notes on wax tablets. The forum hums once more with business and civic duty. The same rhythm as every other day, yet traces of the festival remain, faint but present, in conversation, in memory, in the subtle brightness of those who participated. The Roman citizen joins this return, his steps steady, blending once more into the city's quiet, enduring flow. The cycle of festivals continues without end. Each season brings its own rituals, its own shared gatherings, and its own return to silence. Citizens expect them, prepare for them, and move through them as naturally as they move through ordinary days. For the Roman citizen, the festival is not an escape, but a rhythm within the greater pattern of life. Work, rest, duty, and celebration all weave together, creating the tapestry of existence. And so, after one festival fades, anticipation begins again, patiently waiting for the next. The Roman year moved in cycles, each season carrying its own duties, festivals, and moods. Citizens measured time not just by the calendar, but by the subtle changes in air, the shifting of light, and the rhythm of tasks demanded by weather. Life was not static, but adapted, bending gently to each phase of the year. For the Roman citizen, the passage of seasons was both practical and symbolic, guiding when to plant, when to harvest, when to rest, and when to gather. It was an endless loop, repeating across lifetimes. Early spring arrived with softened winds, and the first green shoots breaking the soil. Citizens felt the difference after the stillness of winter. Cloaks were worn less tightly, doors were opened longer, and courtyards filled once more with activity. Farmers returned to their fields, bending over rows of soil, their hands working steadily to prepare for the months ahead. In the city, fountains splashed with renewed brightness, and markets displayed greens, fresh from surrounding farms. The Roman citizen marked the shift in tone, the city's pulse quickening gently as winter loosened its grip. The markets reflected the season's changes, stalls filled with fresh herbs, early vegetables, and bundles of flowers bound with twine. Housewives inspected carefully, selecting what would nourish their families after months of preserved foods. Children lingered near baskets, drawn to the brightness of spring fruits. Vendors spoke in measured voices, describing the freshness of their goods, repeating phrases long practiced. The Roman citizen moved through this scene slowly, noting not only what was bought but the change itself, the gentle abundance signaling that a new cycle of life had begun again. Fields outside the city became the focus for many. Farmers plowed furrows with oxen, the sound of wooden tools groaning in soil, echoing softly. Seeds were scattered by hand, falling in measured arcs before being covered again. Laborers bent low, repeating movements endlessly, their shadows stretching across furrows in the soft spring sun. The work was steady, neither hurried nor dramatic, but essential, forming the basis of the year's survival. The Roman citizen knew the rhythm well. Spring was for planting, autumn for gathering. Each task had its time, and each season its demand. Within households, spring cleaning took on quiet importance. Walls were scrubbed, clay vessels washed, and sleeping areas cleared of accumulated dust. Woolen blankets used during colder months were shaken and stored, replaced by lighter coverings. Courtyards filled with the scent of fresh water poured over paving stones to settle dirt. Women wove garlands for household shrines, reflecting the renewal of the season. The Roman citizen participated in these small tasks, aware they were as much ritual as labor. The return of light and warmth was welcomed with order, tidiness, and symbolic fresh beginnings. Festivals of renewal marked spring. Small processions honored deities tied to fertility and growth. Offerings of milk, honey, or early produce were placed at shrines. Citizens gathered to watch, their voices quiet, their gestures steady. Children carried wreaths, while priests sprinkled water, blessing both people and soil. These festivals were not extravagant but carried deep meaning, affirming the bond between city, land, and gods. The Roman citizen joined without question, knowing these rituals had guided generations before, marking the steady reawakening of the world after winter's pause. Summer arrived with intensity, its sun sharp and unrelenting. Days lengthened, shadows grew short at noon, and the city shimmered with heat. Citizens adjusted their lives to this rhythm, rising earlier, working during the cooler hours, and resting when the sun was at its peak. Streets appeared quieter at midday, with shutters closed and fountains offering slight relief. The Roman citizen felt the weight of summer each year, not as novelty but as inevitability. It was simply part of the cycle, endured with patience, softened by adjustments in pace and expectation. The midday heat shaped the rhythm of the city. Markets closed earlier, and stalls stood empty under canvas awnings. Children retreated indoors, their games postponed until the evening. Even animals sought shade, lying stretched and still beside stone walls. Work slowed, conversations dimmed, and a calm hush settled across the streets. For the Roman citizen, this stillness was familiar. He, too, rested during these hours, reclining in shaded rooms, drinking water or watered wine, and waiting for the sun's power to ease before resuming his tasks. It was a daily ritual of endurance and patience. Summer fields, however, demanded labor. Farmers rose before dawn, bending to harvest early crops, their bodies glistening with sweat before the sun reached its height. Workers carried tools on their shoulders, the steady swing of sickles slicing grain or cutting grass for animals. Oxen moved slowly, yoked to carts laden with bundles of produce. Voices called across the fields, soft and rhythmic, blending with the sound of cicadas hidden in trees. The Roman citizen witnessed or joined this work, aware it was relentless yet necessary, the foundation upon which the city's food supply depended. Water became precious in summer. Citizens drew it from fountains, filled clay jars, and stored it carefully in shaded rooms. Children splashed at public basins, their laughter carrying lightly in the heat. Wealthier households cooled rooms with flowing water trickling through pipes, though most relied simply on shaded courtyards. Bathhouses offered relief, their pools filled with citizens seeking refreshment in the late afternoon. The Roman citizen often paused to cup water in his hands, splashing it across his face and arms. It was a small ritual, yet it made the heat bearable, offering brief moments of comfort. Evenings in summer were cherished. As the sun lowered, citizens returned outdoors. Families sat in courtyards, sharing simple meals in the cooler air. Neighbors gathered along shaded porticos, their voices low, their gestures slow. Children resumed play, chasing one another barefoot across stones warmed by the day's heat. Lamps flickered to life, casting golden light into the darkening streets. The Roman citizen savored these evenings, knowing the oppressive weight of the day was replaced by calm softness. Summer nights carried their own rhythm, a gentle reward after enduring the sun's sharp hours. Festivals under the summer sun carried energy, despite the heat. Citizens gathered in larger numbers, some shading their heads with cloths, others enduring the brightness with patience. Rituals honored gods, tied to growth and fertility, while games and performances entertained the crowds. Vendors sold fresh fruit, their juices sweet and cooling against the dryness of the air. The Roman citizen joined, moving slowly among others, sharing in the collective rhythm of celebration. The weight of the season did not stop the festival. It only shaped its pace, slowing it into measured, deliberate motions. Autumn arrived with gentler air, the sun softer, the winds cooler. The change was felt immediately. Citizens wore cloaks again. Fires were rekindled in the evenings, and the markets grew richer with produce. Fields became places of harvest, their golden colors spreading across the land. The Roman citizen welcomed autumn each year, relieved by its moderation, grateful for its abundance. It was a season of work, but also of satisfaction, when the labor of spring and summer bore its reward. The city moved with a calm steadiness, shaped by the abundance of gathered crops. Harvest defined the season. Workers filled baskets with grapes, figs, olives, and grain. Vineyards echoed with voices as grapes were trampled into vats, their juices flowing into clay jars. Olive groves produced oil, pressed by stone wheels, turned by steady hands or animals. Fields emptied gradually, their furrows bare once more. The Roman citizen observed or participated, aware of the importance of each task. The harvest was not simply gathering food, it was securing survival for the months ahead. Each load of produce was a thread woven into the fabric of the city's continued life. Markets overflowed in autumn. Stalls brimmed with baskets of fruit, dried herbs, cured meats, and new wines. Citizens moved more slowly through them, inspecting the richness of goods, making careful choices. Housewives bought in larger quantities, preparing for storage. The smells of fresh bread, roasted nuts, and pressed oil mingled, creating an atmosphere of abundance. Children carried small treats, their faces sticky with sweetness. The Roman citizen moved among these scenes, recognizing the unique fullness of the season. The market was not merely a place of trade, but a mirror of the year's success. Within households, preparations for storage took precedence. Grain was kept in sealed jars, dried fruits hung in bunches, and oils poured into carefully sealed amphorae. Fires burned longer, drying herbs and meat for preservation. Families worked together, each member contributing small tasks. Children stacked baskets, elders checked seals, and women tied bundles tightly. The Roman citizen took part, his hands steady in these preparations. The work was methodical, unhurried, but essential. Each stored vessel carried a promise of security, a safeguard against the scarcity winter might bring in the months ahead. Autumn festivals reflected gratitude. Offerings of produce were given at shrines, and small feasts were shared in courtyards. Neighbors exchanged goods, figs for grain, oil for wine, ensuring everyone had what they needed. Processions honored deities tied to the harvest, their rituals steady and calm. Citizens joined without excess, simply acknowledging the bounty received. The Roman citizen participated, adding his voice and presence to the gathering. The festivals were not loud or extravagant, but they carried a quiet depth, marking the close of one cycle and the preparation for the next. The first chill of winter was unmistakable. Winds carried a sharper edge, cloaks were drawn tighter, and smoke rose steadily from household fires. Days shortened, with darkness arriving sooner than expected. Citizens adjusted, completing tasks earlier, gathering indoors before the cold deepened. The Roman citizen felt the shift in his bones, the natural slowing of life that winter demanded. It was not unwelcome, but carried its own challenges. The city seemed quieter, its movement softened by the season as a constraint, its rhythm slower, yet no less purposeful. Shorter days reshaped routines. Mornings began later, as citizens delayed, rising until the sun offered light. Evenings ended sooner, with lamps lit, while tasks continued indoors. The streets emptied more quickly, with fewer lingering outside. Children played less, their games shortened by cold air. Public spaces grew quieter, though markets still functioned with steady trade. The Roman citizen adjusted without question, following the rhythm set by nature. Time itself seemed compressed, with fewer hours of light guiding the day, creating a slower, more deliberate pace for every action. The hearth became the center of winter life. Families gathered close to fires, their bodies warmed by the steady crackle of burning wood. Clay pots simmered with stews, filling homes with the scent of herbs and broth. Shadows danced on walls, flickering gently in the firelight. Conversations flowed quietly, sometimes stories, sometimes silence. The Roman citizen valued this warmth, not only for comfort but for the sense of togetherness it created. In the cold months, the hearth was not just a source of heat, it was the heart of the household. Winter meals were heavier, designed to sustain. Bread was thicker, soups filled with legumes, and dried fruits sweetened the table. Meat appeared rarely, but was cherished when it did. Meals lingered longer, taken in the warmth of lamplight. Wine was warmed, sipped slowly. Children leaned against their parents, half asleep by the end. The Roman citizen ate steadily, savoring the calm of these meals. They were not feasts, but carried a weight of necessity, a reminder of careful preparation in autumn, and the patience required until the return of spring's abundance. Public spaces emptied during winter. The forum was quieter, with fewer gatherings and shorter conversations. Officials still carried out duties, but citizens preferred the shelter of home. Bathhouses remained active, offering warmth and relief, but even they carried a softer, slower tone. The Roman citizen noticed the quiet most in the streets. Footsteps fewer, voices softer, the city moving at a gentler pace. It was not abandonment, but adaptation. The natural retreat into warmth until weather allowed the full rhythm of civic life to return. Household repairs became winter tasks. Broken pottery was mended, tools sharpened, and clothing patched. Women spun wool by the fire, creating new garments for the family. Men checked roofs, tightened beams, and prepared for storms. Children carried small items, learning the rhythm of care and maintenance. These tasks were steady, unhurried, and practical. The Roman citizen joined, his hands smoothing worn wood or stitching torn cloth. Winter was not only about endurance, but preparation, ensuring that when the seasons shifted again, the household would be ready to face the demands of spring. Winter nights carried quiet reflections. Citizens lay awake longer, the darkness lingering, thoughts unfolding slowly in the stillness. Some prayed at household shrines, others whispered stories or recounted memories. The Roman citizen lay beneath his blanket, listening to the distant wind, reflecting on the year past. Each season returned in thought. The planting, the harvest, the festivals, the heat, and the cold. It was not melancholy, but continuity. A reminder that life moved in circles, and he was simply part of that endless, repeating rhythm. Spring's return always felt inevitable. Even before warmth settled, signs appeared. Buds on trees, brighter air, and longer days. Citizens noticed quickly, adjusting cloaks, opening doors wider, and preparing again for planting. Children played more freely in courtyards, their laughter carrying further in the soft air. Farmers sharpened tools, ready to return to the fields. The Roman citizen marked the shift quietly, aware it was both new and familiar. The same cycle experienced countless times. Each return of spring was both repetition and renewal. A reminder of life is an unending flow. Seasonal changes demanded adjustments in clothing. Woolen cloaks in winter, lighter tunics in summer, sandals laced tightly in heat, boots worn in damp months. Women wove fabric to match the season, dyeing cloths in muted tones. Children outgrew garments, requiring constant replacement. The Roman citizen adapted without thought, his attire reflecting the cycle as naturally as his tasks. Clothing was not fashion, but function, a visible marker of the season's demands. The act of changing garments each year was both necessity and ritual, a practical acknowledgement of time's passing. Animals, too, marked the seasons. In spring, they were led to pasture. In summer, they sought shade beside walls. In autumn, they carried loads of produce. In winter, they huddled in barns, fed from stored hay. Their presence shaped daily life. The clucking of chickens, the bray of donkeys, the steady tread of oxen. Children fed them scraps, laughing at their movements. The Roman citizen tended them when necessary, aware their cycles mirrored his own. The animals lived, worked, and rested according to the same rhythm, tied inseparably to the passing year. Children experienced seasons differently. In spring, they gathered flowers and splashed in fountains. In summer, they played in shaded alleys. Their games paused during the midday heat. Autumn brought chasing one another through fields of stubble, their laughter mingling with harvest sounds. Winter drew them indoors, where they played with carved toys by the firelight. The Roman citizen watched them, remembering his own youth, shaped by the same rhythm. Each generation repeated the cycle, their games and joys tied closely to the changing weather, their childhoods marked by the season's steady turn. The memory of the year lingered in the minds of citizens. They spoke of a particularly hot summer, a bountiful harvest, or an early frost. These memories wove together, forming a shared history of time's passage. The Roman citizen carried these recollections quietly, adding each year's story to the ones before. Life was measured not only by years or rulers, but by the cycles of weather, by the small differences noticed between one season and the next. They gave continuity, binding present and past in the endless loop of time. And so the cycle of seasons returned without end. Each phase carried its own tasks, challenges, and comforts. Spring brought renewal, summer endurance, autumn abundance, and winter stillness. The Roman citizen lived within this circle, not above it, adapting with quiet patience. Festivals, meals, duties, and rest. All shifted with the weather's rhythm. It was a life of repetition, yet not of monotony, for each return carried subtle differences. The eternal loop of seasons shaped every citizen, reminding them that life was steady, cyclical, and enduring beyond any single day. The Roman household was more than walls and roofs. It was a small world, shaped by daily routines and endless chores. Within it, the life of a citizen unfolded, steady and repetitive, yet full of small tasks that gave order to existence. The home was not only shelter, but the stage where civica, family, and religious duties intertwined. Every object in every corner had meaning. From the hearth where meals simmered to the shrine where prayers were whispered. For the Roman citizen, the household was both responsibility and comfort, a rhythm that never truly ceased. The layout of a typical Roman home reflected both function and tradition. Narrow entrances led into shaded halls, which opened toward inner courtyards. Some homes were large, filled with multiple rooms, while others were modest, but all followed a structure that shaped daily life. Rooms were often sparsely furnished, wheat clay jars, wooden stalls, and woven mats, serving practical purposes. Walls carried painted patterns, sometimes simple, sometimes elaborate, but always present as silent companions to daily chores. The Roman citizen knew each space intimately, moving from one room to another in a predictable cycle. At the heart of many homes lay the atrium, open to the sky, with a central basin to collect rainwater. This space was more than architecture. It was the gathering point, the place where voices carried and footsteps echoed. Children played here, servants crossed with buckets, and visitors were greeted at its edge. Light streamed down from above, shifting throughout the day, marking time in soft shadows. The Roman citizen paused often in the atrium, its openness a contrast to the narrower, darker rooms beyond. It was a space of life, movement, and continuity. The courtyard, or peristyle, offered another rhythm of household life. Surrounded by columns, it held small gardens, fountains, or simply open air where breezes moved more freely. Families dined here during warmer months, while servants bustled around, carrying trays or fetching water. Birds often perched near, their calls adding to the quiet atmosphere. It was a space where chores blended with moments of leisure, where the citizen might recline after meals, or simply watch the light change on stone walls. The courtyard connected the household to nature, even in the heart of the city. Within each household stood shrines dedicated to household gods. These were small, often placed in corners, yet they carried deep meaning. Offerings of bread, wine, or incense were made daily, ensuring the family's protection. Children learned early to bow their heads in respect, while parents led brief prayers with practiced words. The shrines anchored the household spiritually, binding its daily labor to the divine. The Roman citizen regarded these small rituals as essential, as natural as sweeping the floor or baking bread. They reminded all that the household was not merely practical, but sacred. Morning light entered the household gradually. Slivers of sun crept across stone floors, warming cool walls. Servants rose early, beginning their work before others stirred. Fires were rekindled, water fetched, and bread prepared. The atrium echoed with the sound of footsteps and hushed voices. Children awoke to the bustle, rubbing sleep from their eyes as the day began. The Roman citizen, too, rose to this rhythm, aware that each morning repeated the same quiet tasks. There was no rush, only steadiness, as the household shifted from night's stillness into the labor of the day. At the center of the household stood the paterfamilias, the male head of the family, who held legal and moral authority. His role was not one of constant activity, but of presence. He oversaw the household, managed property, and decided matters of importance. His authority extended to every member, though it was often exercised with quiet weight rather than loud command. The Roman citizen in this role carried responsibility as naturally as breathing, guiding the household's rhythm, ensuring that duties were met, and maintaining order within walls that sheltered both family and servants. The matron, or domino, carried her own set of responsibilities. She oversaw servants, managed stores of food, and ensured that clothing and linens were maintained. Her tasks were endless, though not always performed by her hands directly. She coordinated, guided, and corrected, her presence woven through every domestic act, She spun wool, instructed younger women, and checked the work of others. The Roman citizen's wife held a role of quiet authority, shaping the home's daily function as much as her husband shaped its public standing. Her influence was constant, though rarely loud. Children occupied their place within the household, both learners and helpers. Boys might practice writing on wax tablets, while girls learned weaving or small chores from their mothers. Their voices filled the home with energy, sometimes interrupting the calm, sometimes welcomed as signs of continuity. They played with carved toys, ran across courtyards, or helped carry small items to the kitchen. The Roman citizen watched them with quiet patience, aware that their lives were shaped here, within these walls, by routines that repeated across generations. Childhood was brief, but its lessons endured. Servants formed the household's laboring core. They fetched water, prepared meals, cleaned, tended lamps, and carried goods from market stalls. Their movements were constant, but often unnoticed, blending into the daily hum of chores. Some served closely, attending the family's personal needs, while others worked in kitchens or storerooms. The Roman citizen depended on their labor, even if their presence was rarely acknowledged with more than brief commands. They were part of the household's rhythm, their footsteps and tasks as familiar as the sound of doors opening or fires crackling. The kitchen, though modest, was a center of activity. Fires burned in clay hearths, with pots simmering steadily. Servants ground grain into flour, mixed dough, and baked bread daily. Herbs were chopped, meat salted, and vegetables boiled into simple stews. Smoke often clung to walls, darkening them, while the air carried scents of garlic, olive oil, and bread. Meals were not extravagant for most households, but nourishing, repeated day after day with slight variations. The Roman citizen relied on this steady rhythm of preparation, the quiet work that transformed raw goods into sustenance. Spinning and weaving wool filled many hours, especially for women of the household. Wool was carded, spun into thread, and woven into cloth on simple looms. Hands worked rhythmically, turning, pulling, and knotting, producing garments for the family. It was slow, repetitive labor, requiring patience rather than strength. Young girls learned by watching, their first uneven threads corrected by older women. The Roman citizen observed this as part of household life, aware that clothing came not from markets alone, but from countless hours of work within the home. Wool was both necessity and tradition. Fetching water was another essential task. Though aqueducts supplied fountains, and some homes had access to pipes, most households relied on servants to carry jars filled from nearby basins. These clay containers were heavy, their weight balanced carefully on shoulders. Water was stored in cool, shaded areas, used for cooking, washing, and cleaning. The sound of water being poured into vessels was familiar, echoing through halls. The Roman citizen trusted this daily task, knowing without it, no meal could be prepared, no floor washed, no shrine tended. It was humble work, yet vital to life. Cleaning was constant, as dust settled quickly on stone floors and walls. Servants swept with brooms, scattering dirt into piles before carrying it outside. Surfaces were wiped with damp cloths, and courtyards were splashed with water to cool and refresh them. Lamps left soot that needed wiping, and cooking fires stained walls. The work was never-ending, repeated daily, yet it gave the home order and comfort. The Roman citizen noticed when it was done well, appreciating the quiet freshness of a newly swept floor or the gleam of a polished bronze vessel. Caring for lamps and fire was a daily responsibility. Oil lamps required refilling, their wicks trimmed carefully. Fires in kitchens and hearths had to be managed, kept steady for cooking or warmth. Ash was swept away, and embers stirred to keep them alive. These small acts carried weight, for without flame there was no meal, no light after dusk, no warmth in colder months. Servants performed these tasks patiently, their hands blackened by soot. The Roman citizen observed them with quiet trust, aware that such minor chores sustained the household's comfort. The storage rooms were vital, holding grain, oil, dried fruits, and wine. Amphorae-lined walls, sealed tightly with clay or wax. Baskets of beans, jars of honey, and bundles of herbs filled shelves. These supplies were carefully managed, checked regularly to prevent spoilage or theft. The matron often supervised, counting stores, noting what must be replenished. Children sometimes helped, carrying small baskets, learning the importance of order and supplies. The Roman citizen valued these storerooms as symbols of security. Each sealed jar promised meals in the future, stability in uncertain times. Household tools and utensils were simple but essential. Clay pots, bronze pans, wooden spoons, and stone mortar-filled kitchens. Brooms, baskets, and knives were used daily, each showing signs of wear. Repairs were frequent, with handles replaced or edges sharpened. Servants handled them with familiarity, knowing their weight and use without thought. These tools were not luxuries, but necessities, part of the silent machinery of the household. The Roman citizen rarely reflected on them, yet their presence underpinned every task, every meal, every small act of maintenance that sustained daily life. The small garden offered quiet greenery within walls of stone. Herbs grew in rows, vegetables sprouted in beds, and sometimes flowers added brightness. Bees hovered, and small birds visited, drawn to seeds and water. Servants tended the soil, pulling weeds and watering carefully. Families gathered herbs daily for cooking, their scent filling courtyards and kitchens alike. The Roman citizen appreciated this garden, both for its usefulness and its calm. It was a reminder of the land's cycle, compressed into a small space, a touch of nature within the confines of the city. Animals lived alongside the household. Chickens clucked in small enclosures, dogs padded through courtyards, and occasionally goats or pigeons were kept. Their sounds and movements became part of the home's rhythm. Children fed them scraps, servants gathered eggs, and animals offered both food and companionship. Dogs guarded doors, while cats kept pests away. The Roman citizen accepted their presence as natural, as ordinary as lamps or baskets. They were not separate from domestic life, but woven into it, shaping the sounds and tasks of each day in their small but constant ways. Preparing for guests was a steady responsibility. Floors were swept again, lamps polished, and couches arranged. Servants carried water for washing, prepared trays of bread, fruit, or olives, and set aside wine jars. The matron oversaw the arrangements, ensuring that nothing appeared neglected. Children were guided to behave quietly, while the paterfamilias prepared to greet visitors formally. These tasks carried weight, reflecting not only hospitality, but reputation. The Roman citizen understood that the household was judged by its order, its meals, and its readiness to welcome others with calm dignity. Daily prayers tied the household to the divine. At small shrines, incense was lit, or bread offered. These rituals were brief, but essential, performed at morning or evening, sometimes both. The paterfamilias or matron led them, while others stood in silence. Children learned the gestures early, repeating them with solemn care. Servants participated as well, their presence marking unity within the home. The Roman citizen knew these rituals were not grand displays, but quiet affirmations. They sanctified the ordinary, binding daily chores and meals to the unseen but ever-present gods. Reading and writing occurred within the home, though not for all. Wax tablets were used for notes, accounts, or practice by children. Scrolls of literature or records rested on shelves, consulted occasionally by the patron. The act of writing was slow, careful, with stylus pressed into soft wax or ink brushed onto papyrus. These tasks were not constant, but present, woven into the rhythm of domestic duties. The Roman citizen might read aloud in the evening, his voice filling the room, bringing distant words into the center of the household's calm. Leisure in the household was simple. Games with dice, small carvings, or storytelling filled quieter hours. Children chased each other in courtyards, while adults sometimes reclined, speaking of daily matters or neighbors' news. Music appeared occasionally, played on flutes or lyres, soft and steady rather than grand. These moments were not escapes from duty, but part of the rhythm itself. Work and rest blended, alternating naturally. The Roman citizen valued these pauses, brief respites that balanced the endless chores, ensuring the household was not only a place of labor but also of calm contentment. Afternoons carried a slower pace. The sun pressed heavily, and tasks lessened in intensity. Servants worked quietly in shaded rooms. Children napped, and adults rested. The hum of the household softened, broken only by the clatter of dishes or the shuffle of footsteps. This pause was necessary, allowing energy to gather for the evening. The Roman citizen accepted it as part of the rhythm, a time when duties faded briefly, replaced by silence and stillness. The house itself seemed to breathe more slowly, its walls resting with those who lived within them. Evenings restored activity. Lamps were lit, meals prepared, and voices grew louder once more. Families gathered, sharing bread, olives, and simple stews, speaking softly as lamps flickered. Afterward, stories were told, tasks resumed, or small repairs completed. The household pulsed with quiet energy, as if gathering strength before night's stillness. Guests might visit, or neighbors might exchange words across courtyards. The Roman citizen found comfort in these evenings, the way they brought the household together and shared meals and shared words, marking the close of another ordinary, steady day. Preparing the household for night was a chore in itself. Lamps were extinguished carefully, embers banked to smolder until morning. Doors were bolted, animals checked, and water jars filled for the next day. Children were guided to beds, their chatter fading into whispers. Servants completed last duties, sweeping, folding, and tidying. Before resting themselves, the Roman citizen oversaw this with calm patience, aware it was the same each night. The house gradually fell into darkness and silence, ready to begin the same rhythm again when dawn returned with its first light. Repairs and maintenance punctuated the steady chores. Roof tiles were checked, ink mended, and furniture repaired. Tools dulled by use were sharpened, baskets rewoven, and clothing patched. These small acts prevented greater troubles, ensuring the household functioned smoothly. Work was rarely dramatic, but always necessary. Servants and family members alike participated, their hands busy with slow, careful movements. The Roman citizen valued this constant attention to detail, understanding that a household endured not by grandeur, but by the quiet care given to its smallest, most ordinary parts. Seasonal changes shaped chores indoors. In summer, windows were shaded, and water was carried more often to cool courtyards. In winter, blankets were unpacked, lamps burned longer, and fires consumed more wood. Each season demanded its own adjustments, its own rhythm of tasks. The household adapted without resistance, folding these changes into daily life. The Roman citizen felt them as natural shifts, no different from breathing or walking. The year's cycle was written in the household itself, in the tasks that repeated but never felt entirely the same. Generations shared homes, with grandparents, parents, and children living under the same roof. Each had a place, a role, and a set of tasks. Elders advised, adults labored, children learned. Their voices mingled daily, shaping the soundscape of the household. Meals included all. Conversations flowed across ages, and duties were divided naturally. The Roman citizen experienced this continuity as a blessing, a reminder that the household was larger than himself, tied across time. The presence of generations brought both labor and comfort, weaving memory into the rhythm of each day. The household, in its endless chores and quiet duties, was a circle of life, from dawn to dusk, season to season, year to year. Its rhythm never ceased. Tasks were repeated endlessly, from sweeping to cooking, from prayers to repairs. Yet this repetition gave life stability, grounding each citizen in familiarity and order. The Roman citizen accepted this cycle without complaint, for within it lay meaning, the care of family, the service of gods, and the quiet persistence of ordinary life. The household was not grand, but it was eternal. The hum of Roman life was marked by work. From sunrise to evening, the city and countryside stirred with the quiet rhythm of labor. People moved about their trades without hurry, each step part of a cycle that repeated day after day. The sound of sandals on stone streets, the smell of bread rising, and the creak of wooden carts filled the air. No one questioned the tasks at hand. They were simply done. Work in Rome was not only survival, but the steady beat that tied each person to the city and to one another. Before the sun warmed the streets, farmers were already in their fields. They walked between rows of wheat and barley, bending to check the earth, guiding oxen across furrows. The sound of wooden plows scraping soil mixed with the calls of birds waking nearby. Farmers' lives followed the slow turn of the seasons, each morning resembling the last. Harvests, sowing, and tending never ended. The smell of damp earth lingered on their clothes, and the weight of their tools rested heavy in calloused hands. Their work, humble and quiet, supported the city beyond their view. In the still darkness, before dawn, bakers prepared their ovens. The crackle of fire filled the small rooms, where flour dusted every surface. Dough was kneaded with steady, practiced motions, pressed and folded until smooth. Round loaves were shaped, each nearly identical to the last. Heat radiated from clay ovens, and the smell of baking bread drifted out into empty streets. When citizens awoke, bread would be waiting at stalls and homes. The bakers themselves would already be weary. Their day's most important work finished before sunlight touched the rooftops. Clay turned beneath the hands of potters. Their wheels spun slowly, guided by steady pressure, shaping vessels that would hold grain, oil, or wine. The soft scrape of wet clay and the splash of water echoed in quiet workshops. Rows of drying pots lined shelves and courtyards, each one plain but essential. Potters worked without hurry, repeating the same motions, shaping the same forms. The city required endless vessels, and so their work never ceased. Their craft was not for beauty alone, but for daily use, filling kitchens and markets with containers both fragile and strong. Weavers sat by their looms, their hands moving with patient rhythm. Threads were lifted and lowered, crossed and pressed into place. The gentle clack of wood and the soft pool of wool marked the hours. Fabrics grew slowly, row upon row, until plain cloth stretched across the frame. Some was dyed in muted colors, others left simple and white. Garments for ordinary citizens took shape here, made not for luxury, but for necessity. The weaver's labor was quiet, repetitive, and long, yet each length of cloth carried with it the effort of many hours. In small workshops, blacksmiths bent over their forges. The glow of coals lit their faces as hammers rang against metal. Sparks leaped and faded quickly in the dim air. Iron was heated, struck, and shaped into tools, nails, hinges, or blades. Sweat marked their work, though the motions were familiar after years of practice. The city depended on their steady craft, from farming tools to simple household fittings. Blacksmiths rarely worked alone. Apprentices stood nearby, handing tools or pumping bellows. The sound of metal striking metal carried down narrow alleys, part of the daily music of labor. Carpenters worked with wood in open courtyards, where the smell of fresh shavings mixed with the dust of sawed beams. They shaped planks into tables, doors, and stools, each piece plain but sturdy. Wooden frames supported roofs, and shutters closed against the sun. Tools clinked and scraped as saws bit into grain, and chisels carved out joints. Their skill lay not in decoration, but in making wood useful for ordinary life. Each stroke of the tool was measured, familiar, and calm. Their work, though often unnoticed, filled Roman homes with objects both simple and lasting. Along the riverbanks, fishermen prepared their nets. The morning air was cool, and water rippled quietly beneath the boats. Nets were cast with practiced swings, spreading wide before sinking into the current. The fishermen waited in silence, their eyes on the surface. Small catches filled baskets enough for families, for markets, for taverns needing fresh meals. The smell of river water clung to them as they pulled in their nets again and again. Fishing was not grand, but steady. Their labor fed the city in small ways, unseen yet essential, as constant as the tide itself. Stonemasons labored in steady rhythm, their tools striking blocks with dull thuds. Dust rose in the air, settling on their skin and clothes. They shaped rough rock into smoother edges, fitting pieces together for walls, streets, and temples. Each strike was measured, each cut deliberate. Their work demanded patience, strength, and endurance. Yet the progress was slow. The stones they placed would outlast them, forming the foundations and paths that citizens walked daily. Though the masons' names were rarely remembered, their labor held the city together, one chiseled stone at a time. Builders worked in teams across city projects, lifting timber, hauling stones, and mixing mortars. The noise of construction filled the air. Ropes creaking, hammers striking, carts rolling across uneven ground. Walls rose slowly, arches stretched across spaces, and scaffolds lined the sides of half-finished structures. Each man had his task, repeated without end, until the project was complete. Though grand temples and forums drew attention, it was the builders' daily persistence that gave them form. Their work, repetitive and unadorned, was the unseen force behind every building that shaped the Roman world. Markets stirred as vendors prepared their stalls. Tables were laid with baskets of fruit, loaves of bread, jars of oil, and bolts of cloth. The chatter of sellers began before the crowds arrived, each arranging goods neatly, adjusting shade covers overhead. Prices were set with care, ready to be bargained. The market was not only commerce, but a rhythm of setup and closing that repeated daily. The vendors themselves worked long hours, their voices hoarse from calling out wares. That labor was not only in selling, but in the patience to wait, day after day. In quiet corners, scribes bent over wooden desks, their reeds dipped in ink. They copied lines onto papyrus, their hands steady, their eyes sharp. The work was slow, demanding care to avoid mistakes. Documents, letters, and records passed through their hands, each word preserving information for families, merchants, or officials. The scratching of pen on surface filled the silence, broken only by the occasional pause to sharpen a reed. Scribes worked in stillness, their labor invisible yet lasting. Through their patience, knowledge moved across time, though most citizens never noticed their quiet trade. Teachers gathered small groups of students in shaded courtyards. Children recited words, repeated phrases, and traced letters on wax tablets. The teacher's voice guided them with calm repetition, correcting mistakes with steady patience. Lessons stretched through the hours, slow and measured. The children fidgeted, yet continued, their voices blending into a quiet hum of practice. Education was a trade in itself, not always grand, but necessary for those who could afford it. The teacher's work was less about brilliance than persistence, shaping young minds with steady effort, one repeated word at a time. Physicians moved through the city, called two homes for small ailments. They carried simple tools and jars of herbs, their knowledge practical, not miraculous. A cough, a wound, a fever each was treated with the remedies known to them, drawn from plants, oils, and old teachings. Their visits were quiet affairs, patient and unhurried. They spoke with families, gave advice, and left behind small measures of comfort. The work was steady, a blend of tradition and guesswork, yet it was enough for many. Healing was not quick, but the physician's presence offered reassurance. Barbers offered small services in humble shops along the street. Customers sat quietly as razors scraped beards and scissors trimmed hair. The work was plain, but it provided a moment of care in the routine of life. Talk drifted in the ergo stuff, news, and the quiet murmur of conversation. The barber's tools clicked and scraped in steady rhythm, each motion practiced and sure. Such trades were not only about appearance, but about a shared space where citizens gathered briefly before returning to their duties. The barber's labor was simple, yet rooted in daily need. Taverns stirred with the work of cooks. Fires burned, pots simmered, and the smell of stews filled the rooms. Bread was sliced, fish grilled, and wine poured into clay cups. The cook's hands moved constantly, stirring, seasoning, and tasting. Meals were plain but filling, meant to serve travelers and workers who sought rest. The labor of cooking was repetitive, yet the reward was immediate. Full stomachs and satisfied patrons. The cooks themselves worked in heat and noise, often unseen, their effort blending into the rhythm of a place that never truly fell silent. Innkeepers managed small lodgings where travelers rested. Beds were simple, straw-filled and worn, yet the rooms provided shelter for the night. The innkeeper's labor was in sweeping floors, tending fires, preparing modest meals, and welcoming strangers. Their work extended into long evenings, as guests arrived late from the road. The sound of carts stopping outside, the shuffle of tired feet, and the murmur of voices filled their halls. Inns were humble, yet essential. Each traveler depended on the steady presence of the innkeeper, who kept doors open when the city grew quiet. Water carriers moved steadily through the streets, balancing heavy jars filled at fountains. Their shoulders bore the weight of water needed for homes without direct access. Step after step, they repeated the same path, from fountain to door, from courtyard to well. The sound of water sloshing within clay vessels echoed softly. Their pace was slow, but unbroken, for the task demanded strength and patience. Few noticed them beyond the delivery, yet without their labor, households would falter. Their work was invisible, yet essential, flowing through the city as surely as the aqueducts themselves. Porters carried goods across busy streets. Their backs bore baskets, crates, and bundles, tied with ropes or balanced with care. They moved between markets, workshops, and homes, often unnoticed by those around them. The strain of weight pressed into their steps. Yet they continued, day after day, carrying what others could not. Their labor left no monument, no lasting mark. Only the steady presence of goods moved from one place to another. In silence and sweat, porters kept the city supplied, their effort woven quietly into the rhythm of Roman life. Leather workers bent over tables, shaping hides into belts, straps, and pouches. The smell of tanned skin lingered in the air, strong and sharp. Knives cut with careful strokes, while awls pierced holes for stitching. Their products were practical, used daily by farmers, soldiers, and citizens alike. Each piece carried marks of handwork imperfections that spoke of its making. Their trade was not celebrated, yet it endured, for the leather was needed in every walk of life. The leatherworker's shop was a place of quiet focus, where patience and skill slowly turned raw hide into something useful. Shoemakers fitted sandals with quiet precision. Strips of leather were measured, shaped, and fastened to soles. Simple in design, yet vital for every step on stone streets. Their work wore down quickly under constant use. Citizens returned often for repairs or replacements, and shoemakers obliged with steady skill. Their shops were filled with scraps, tools, and half-finished pairs, each one taking shape beneath steady hands. Though sandals were humble, they carried every citizen across their daily paths. The shoemaker's craft was unseen in its simplicity, yet it touched every life with each step. Candle makers and oil sellers prepared for the city's nights. Wicks were dipped into melted wax, cooled, and dipped again, each layer slowly building light. Clay lamps were filled with oil, sold with small bundles of linen wicks. Their labor was repetitive, slow, and careful, for mistakes could ruin the work. The city relied on them to push back darkness, to bring light to homes, shops, and streets. Though their trade seemed modest, it offered comfort and safety. Without them, nights would fall silent and unlit, leaving citizens in shadows after the day's labor ended. Herb and spice sellers arranged small bundles on wooden tables. Leaves, roots, and seeds, gathered from countryside or imported from distant lands, were measured out with care. The air carried faint scents, sharp, earthy, or sweet. Customers came for remedies, flavoring, or simple curiosity. The sellers spoke softly, explaining uses, repeating knowledge passed down through generations. Their work was in preparation, in knowing what to offer for each request. Though their goods were small in size, they carried weight in homes, kitchens, and cities. Their labor was quiet, practical, and bound to daily need. Public squares filled with entertainers, acrobats, jugglers, and storytellers performed for small crowds, their movements practiced through repetition. Coins clinked into baskets, modest rewards for long hours. Their labor was not only in performance, but in persistent standing day after day, attracting audiences from the city was full of distractions, yet their presence brought a pause to routine. Laughter, applause, or silence followed each act. Though their craft was fleeting, it offered small breaks from labor, moments of lightness in a world otherwise steady with work. Entertainment, too, was part of Roman trades. Musicians played in gatherings, their instruments simple yet effective. Flutes, drums, and lyres filled air with gentle rhythm. Their work required practice, though the tunes were often plain and familiar. They played in taverns, at feasts, and in courtyards where families gathered. Music carried softly, adding calm to meals or marking moments in festivals. The musician's trade was not grand, yet it was constant. Each note repeated what had been played countless times before, weaving sound into the fabric of daily life. Their labor was in practice, patience, and persistence, day after day. Small plays unfolded in corners of the city, where actors took on simple roles. Their voices rose, their gestures exaggerated, yet their work was not for fame, but for the passing pleasure of neighbors. Costumes were plain, masks reused until worn. The actors' labor lay in memorization, in repeating lines, in keeping the tradition alive. Crowds gathered briefly, then dispersed, returning to their own routines. The performance faded quickly, but the effort lingered for the actors, who began again the next day. Theater, even in humble form, was another rhythm of Roman labor. Artists worked slowly on mosaics, pressing colored stones into mortar. Their hands moved with precision, placing piece after piece, building patterns that grew into floors and walls. Hours stretched as they repeated the same motion, filling small spaces with color. The work was painstaking, requiring patience and care, yet the results could last for centuries. Their art was not only for beauty, but for daily use, as citizens walked across patterned floors. The mosaic makers' labor was quiet, steady, and humble, though their creations endured long after the worker's name was forgotten. In quiet courtyards, sculptors chipped away at blocks of stone. Dust rose with each strike of the chisel, shaping rough outlines into familiar forms. Some works were grand, but many were simple figures for homes, small decorations, or functional carvings. The sound of stone splitting echoed softly, punctuated by pauses to step back, to consider. Their work advanced slowly, over weeks or months, yet progress was steady. The sculptor's trade demanded patience above all. Each figure carried marks of time and labor, silent testimony to hands that shaped cold stone into lasting form. As the sun lowered, the day's work wound down. Workshops closed their doors, tools were set aside, and fires dimmed in forges and ovens. Citizens walked home, carrying the fatigue of labor in their steps. The city quieted, though faint sounds of work still lingered. Each trade had its rhythm, each task its place. Work was not celebrated with fanfare, but it was the pulse of life, binding the city together. Ordinary Romans labored not for glory, but for necessity, each day repeating the last, steady and unbroken. In reflection, Roman labor was a mosaic of countless trades: farmers, artisans, merchants, and performers. Each contributed to the slow rhythm of the city. Their work, often unseen or forgotten, shaped the lives of all who lived there. Each trade carried repetition, patience, and persistence, grounded in the quiet necessity of survival. The hum of daily work was not extraordinary, yet it was enduring. It was in the steady hands of workers that Rome's true strength lay not in monuments alone, but in the unbroken cycle of ordinary labor. The first light of dawn filtered through narrow windows, casting soft beams across stone floors. Inside the Roman home, the air was still, heavy with the coolness of night. A servant stirred first, moving quietly to begin small tasks before the household fully woke. Outside, the faint sound of neighbors' footsteps echoed in the street, blending with the distant call of a rooster. The home itself seemed to breathe slowly, waiting for the day to begin. Within these walls, ordinary life unfolded not in grand gestures, but in steady rhythms, repeated faithfully day after day. As the household awakened, small sounds began to fill the air. Sandals shuffled across floors, voices whispered, and wooden doors creaked softly as they opened. The master of the house stirred later than servants, while children stretched, yawning away sleep. The first tasks were simple folding blankets, straightening mats, and opening shutters to allow fresh air. These small rituals marked the true beginning of the day, setting order after the stillness of night. In each corner a different rhythm could be heard, each member of the household falling into their familiar routine. The hearth was lit with care, the faint crackle of fire returning warmth to the cool morning air. Dry twigs and kindling caught the flame, followed by thicker wood that would burn steadily. The fire was not only for warmth, but for cooking the meals that structured the day. Smoke curled upward, drifting through an opening above, leaving the faint scent of wood in the air. As flames' gray pots were set in place, ready for water to boil or bread to bake. The hearth's light was the true center of Roman home life. Courtyards, even in small homes, required sweeping and tidying each morning. Dust settled overnight, leaves drifted in, and small scraps of daily life collected underfoot. A servant or a housewife moved patiently with a broom, clearing away what did not belong. Water was sometimes sprinkled on the ground to settle dust before sweeping. These small acts of order carried significance, for the courtyard was the heart of the home. Cleanliness, though simple, offered peace of mind. The sound of bristles against stone and the splash of water were among the earliest sounds of each Roman morning. Fetching water from public fountains was a daily necessity. Clay jars were carried out in pairs, balanced on shoulders or arms, to be filled and brought back home. At the fountain, neighbors gathered briefly, exchanging quiet words while waiting their turn. The water, cool and clear, poured steadily from carved spouts into jars. The journey back required care, as the vessels were heavy and fragile. Once inside, the water was stored for drinking, cooking, or cleaning throughout the day. This task linked each household to the wider city, tied together by the flow of water. Bread formed the basis of every meal, and preparing it was a steady routine. Flour was measured into bowls, mixed with water and salt, then kneaded until smooth. The dough was set aside to rise, covered by cloths, while other tasks continued. Later, it would be shaped into small loaves and baked on hot stones or in clay ovens. The smell of baking bread spread through homes and into narrow streets, mingling with the air of the city. It was not a meal of luxury, but a sustenance, a simple comfort that tied each day to the last. Household shrines, small yet central, received quiet attention each morning. Offerings of fruit, bread, or wine were placed carefully before carved figures. A few words of prayer followed, murmured with sincerity if not grandeur. Smoke from incense curled upward, carrying with it the hopes of protection and health. These acts were brief, yet they gave rhythm to daily life. The shrine was a reminder of duty, of connection between family and the divine. Its presence grounded the household, giving even ordinary mornings a sense of continuity that stretched beyond the boundaries of a single day. Once offerings were given, daily chores were arranged. Servants awaited instructions, while family members took on smaller tasks. Some prepared meals, others tended clothing or cared for children. Each person understood their part in maintaining the home, though the distribution was often uneven. Masters of the house directed, while labor fell to wives, daughters, and servants. Chores were not hurried, but unfolded steadily through the hours. This rhythm was as essential as the walls themselves, binding together the daily function of the household. Without it, the home would lose its quiet, reliable order. Rooms were swept and tidied in steady routine. Straw from mats was shaken out, dust brushed from corners, and floors cleaned with damp cloths. Furniture was simple, but even stools and tables required wiping. Beds were straightened, blankets folded neatly at their edges. The act was less about perfection than about restoring order. Each task took little time, yet together they shaped the atmosphere of the home. Clean rooms invited calm, and calm encouraged steady living. The sound of sweeping and folding blended with the murmurs of conversation, creating a quiet harmony within the walls. Laundry was washed by hand, often in courtyards where water could be poured freely. Clothing was soaked, rubbed with ash or soap, and beaten against stone to loosen dirt. The work was tiring, yet necessary. After rinsing, garments were spread across lines or laid on bushes to dry under the sun. The sight of cloth fluttering in the breeze was common across Roman neighborhoods. This chore was shared among women and servants. The rhythm of washing repeated weekly, if not daily, though wearisome. It was also a mark of diligence, ensuring garments remained ready for use. Weaving and mending garments filled quiet hours of the day. Women sat with wool or flax, spinning thread or repairing worn fabric. Looms stood in some homes, their wooden frames creaking as cloth grew row by row. The sound of shuttle and thread formed a steady pattern, comforting in its repetition. Old garments were patched, tiers sewn carefully, ensuring nothing was wasted. The work was slow, but it gave rhythm to afternoons, occupying hands while conversation passed gently between family members. Through weaving, clothing was not only repaired but renewed, continuing its life within the household. Children filled rooms with their play, though toys were simple. Wooden figures, clay balls, or small carved animals were passed between hands. Laughter and shouts echoed softly, breaking the quiet of chores. Sometimes, games were made from scraps of daily life stones arranged in patterns, or races across courtyards. Play was often watched by parents or servants, who balanced patience with reminders of rules. These moments, though noisy, were a natural part of the household. They gave life to otherwise quiet rooms, reminding all within that the rhythm of home was not only work, but joy. As midday approached, preparations for the main meal began. Vegetables were chopped, lentils simmered, and bread warmed again. The smell of garlic, onions, and herbs filled kitchens, mingling with the smoky scent of the hearth. Meat was ready, reserved for wealthier families or special occasions, but stews and porridges provided steady nourishment. Cooking required attention, yet it unfolded calmly, with familiar motions repeated daily. Meals were not feasts, but necessities, shaped by the ingredients at hand. The kitchen, though plain, became a place of focus, where care and effort turned humble supplies into sustaining food. Tables were set with simplicity. Wooden boards or low stands were laid with clay cups, bowls, and loaves of bread. Oil lamps, if needed, were placed nearby for light. There was no ornament beyond the food itself, which was shared plainly. The act of setting the table was not hurried, but methodical, ensuring each person had what was needed. Water and wine, diluted for drinking, were placed at the side. Families or households gathered around, their presence turning simple settings into occasions of quiet togetherness. The table became, if only briefly, the center of daily life. Meals were eaten without grandeur, but with calm conversation. Bread was dipped in oil or stew, vegetables spooned from shared bowls. Each person ate according to their portion, while the household maintained quiet order. Children were guided to eat carefully. Servants ate after masters, and each member took what was offered. The sound of chewing and quiet voices blended into the hum of family life. The meal was neither rushed nor extended. It was steady like the rest of the day. When finissé dishes were cleared away, leaving the table bare once more. After meals, the heat of the day encouraged rest. Curtains were drawn, mats spread, and sandals removed as citizens lay down to nap. Silence returned to the home, broken only by the occasional stir of someone turning in their sleep. Outside, the streets grew quieter too, as neighbors also sought respite. This midday rest was not indulgence, but necessity, a pause that allowed the body to endure the weight of heat and labor. Within homes, the air was still, heavy with the rhythm of breathing, as the city slowed to a gentle standstill. Neighbors sometimes visited during afternoons, bringing conversation that wove gently through the stillness. They exchanged news, spoke of markets, or shared small concerns. The visits were not hurried, but unfolded with the pace of leisure. Each word, another layer of connection. A cup of watered wine or a piece of fruit might be offered. Gestures of hospitality. These visits reminded households that they were not alone, but part of a larger fabric of community. The sound of voices carried softly across courtyards, blending with the distant noises of other homes engaged in the same ritual. Household repairs occupied some afternoons. Stools with loose legs were tightened, clay vessels patched, and tools sharpened. Each repair was small, but together they kept the home functional. The work required patience more than skill, a willingness to tend to what was already familiar rather than replace it. Hands worked steadily, smoothing, tying, or sealing as needed. These acts of maintenance were quiet and unremarkable, yet they carried importance. A well-kept home was not built on new possessions, but on the care given to old ones. Such repairs tied the household to the rhythm of diligence. Gardens within courtyards or behind homes provided small but steady harvests. Herbs, beans, or cabbages grew in neat rows, tended daily by careful hands. Water was carried to them, weeds pulled, and soil loosened to keep roots healthy. The gardens were modest, yet they offered food and fragrance, brightening otherwise plain stone surrounded. Children might chase insects between rows, while elders inspected the growth with satisfaction. Each plant marked time as it grew, another sign of seasons passing steadily. In tending these gardens, Roman households found a quiet connection to the earth within the city's walls. Domestic animals, though few in number, required care each day. Chickens clucked in small enclosures, their eggs collected carefully in the morning. Dogs guarded doorways, loyal yet demanding food and attention. Even cats wandered in courtyards, chasing pests or resting in the sun. Feeding and tending these creatures fell to servants or children whose hands carried scraps or water. The presence of animals added life to homes, softening the hard edges of stone and wood. Their sounds mingled with human voices, a reminder that even in urban spaces, families lived among creatures needing daily care. Education often began at home, where children learned letters, numbers, and stories from parents or tutors. Wax tablets were used for practice, their surfaces smoothed clean for reuse. Lessons were steady and repetitive, more discipline than excitement. Reading aloud filled the rooms, words rolling slowly as children learned rhythm and tone. Fathers instructed sons in duties, while mothers guided daughters in household tasks. The home itself became a classroom, where knowledge was passed not only through books, but through daily observation. Learning at home tied children closely to the rhythms of family life and tradition. Evening meals required more preparation than earlier ones, as families expected a slower, more filling gathering. Vegetables, grains, and sometimes fish were cooked into stews, while bread was warmed once again. Herbs added flavor, though ingredients remained simple. Servants bustled quietly, arranging foods in bowls and setting out cups. The hearth glowed brighter as pots simmered, casting shadows across walls. Outside, the city softened into dusk, and inside, families prepared to draw closer together. The act of preparing supper became more than labor. It was the anticipation of rest after a day of steady tasks. As twilight deepened, oil lamps were lit one by one. Their faint flames flickered against stone walls, filling rooms with golden light. Lamps were carried to corners where shadows lingered, set carefully on shelves or tables. Olive oil fueled their glow, with wicks trimmed neatly to burn cleanly. The soft light transformed homes, turning them from places of labor into spaces of quiet retreat. Families gathered around these lamps, their glow offering comfort and a sense of intimacy. The day's final hours unfolded gently beneath their watch, steady flames marking the transition from work to rest. Conversations after sunset carried a slower pace than those of morning or afternoon. Voices lowered, words stretched, and pauses lengthened as families shared their thoughts. Stories were told, sometimes of ancestors or gods, sometimes of events in the marketplace. Plans for the following day were quietly discussed, tasks assigned once more. These talks were not hurried debates, but slow exchanges of thought, shaped by the calm of evening. The home seemed to breathe differently at night, its walls containing the warmth of shared voices. Conversation, though ordinary, became the final thread binding the household together. Games and pastimes filled some evenings. Dice rattled softly in cups, marked stones were arranged for small games, and children played simple challenges. Adults might join, though their moves were slower, shaped by years of familiarity with such diversions. These pastimes were not for victory, but for the passing of time, a way to smooth the edges of evening. The rhythm of play added laughter and ease to homes otherwise quiet. Even small games carried importance, reminding families that joy existed not only in grand events, but in the simplest diversions shared after labor was complete. Bathing before rest was a ritual valued in Roman homes, even when done simply. Water was heated at the hearth and poured into basins, where family members washed hands, faces, and feet. Wealthier homes might visit public baths, but ordinary households found comfort in smaller routines. The sound of water pouring, the feeling of coolness against skin, and the relief of washing away dust marked a quiet closure to the day. These acts were not indulgence, but necessity, leaving bodies and minds refreshed. Bathing, even modestly, prepared the household for the calm of night. Before sleep, shrines once again received offerings. Lamps flickered nearby as prayers were spoken softly, thanking the gods for protection throughout the day. Small gestures, a coin, a fruit, or a crumb of bread were laid at the shrine. The ritual, though brief, carried weight, reminding families of their place within divine order. The household gods, ever present, were not forgotten, even in weariness. This evening devotion brought balance, matching the morning's prayers, closing the circle of daily faith. In quiet reverence, homes prepared not only for rest, but for the hope of another day to follow. Doors were secured for the night with heavy bolts or wooden bars. Curtains were drawn, shutters closed, and lamps dimmed to conserve oil. The act of securing the home was both practical and symbolic, marking the final separation from the outside world. Within these walls, safety was sought against the uncertainty of night. The sound of wood sliding into place was familiar, reassuring all within that they were sheltered. Once doors were barred, the home became entirely its own world, isolated from streets beyond, ready to hold its inhabitants in silence and rest. Quiet settled over the household as the last conversations faded. Children curled into blankets, servants withdrew to their corners, and adults stretched on mats or low beds. The sounds of the city soft outside, replaced by the occasional bark of a dog or a distant step of a passerby. Inside, only the rhythm of breathing remained, steady and calm. The home seemed to exhale, its labors complete, its duties ended. Sleep spread slowly, moving from room to room, until the entire household lay still. The night belonged not to activity, but to silence and waiting. In the darkness, reflection lingered on the ordinary acts of the day. Each task, small though it seemed, had shaped the rhythm of life within the home. From sweeping courtyards to tending shrines, from preparing bread to securing doors, the household had moved through its steady pattern. Nothing was grand, yet everything was essential. In the quiet of night, the Roman citizen might recognize that true life was built not on battles or speeches, but on these ordinary acts repeated faithfully. The home, in its stillness, carried the true heart of Roman existence.